This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome to TSPR show. This is Dr. Tangella Shiva Prasad Reddy alias Dr. TSPR. Namaste, Adab, hello, and a warm welcome to my Guru Professor K. Purushottam Reddy Garu, Gurutuluru BV Subbarao Garu. And what a way again, consecutive day, I'm hosting them on another important topic, World Consumer Day. ప్రపంచ వినియోగదారుల దినం దినం అంటే వేరే విధంగా కాదు సుబ్బన్న గారు చెప్తారు మీకు దినం అంటే వాళ్ళకు దినం బెట్ట అంటారు ప్రభుత్వాలకు దినం బెట్ట మనకి ఏమైతలేవు అంటారు కాబట్టి మనకు హక్కులు ఉన్నాయని మేము ట్యాగ్ లైన్ నిన్న పంపించారు అంటే పౌరులు మర్చిపోతున్నారు మనకు హక్కులు ఉన్నాయి మనం డబ్బులు పెడితే దానికి తగ్గట్టు విలువ తగ్గట్టు రావాలి ఏదైనా వినియోగదారుడికి లోబడే ఎటువంటి ప్రణాళికలైనా చేయాలనేది మర్చిపోయినారు every policy should be in the interest of consumer and consumer is again a constitutional authority themselves. So what a better way again to host my two gurus on this wonderful occasion of World Consumer Day. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you.
And Hyderabad Democracy Forum is hosting this, and Subbarao kindly take.
Welcome to Professor Purushottam Reddy Garu and Dr. Shiv Prasad Garu and to all the viewers. Today is a very important day, World Consumer Day. Whenever I think of the consumer rights, only one name strikes to me. That is Mrs. Madhu Dandavati. She rocked the Bombay in 70s.
Yeah.
On consumer movement. So today it has changed a lot, consumers' attitude, and once again consumers have to realize their rights on the consumer. It is the consumer movement which seeded actually the movement for green revolution in Germany. No to plastics. So, without much introduction, I would like to invite Professor Purushottam Reddy Garu to deliver the keynote on Consumer Day. Professor Purushottam Reddy Garu.
Yeah. Thank you, Subbarao Garu, for your kind words and introduction. I'm also grateful to Shiv Prasad Reddy because it is the only channel which has come forward to highlight human rights, consumer rights, and so on. The topic for today is basically we plan to go back to 1962 when John F. Kennedy, he was the president and he addressed the US Congress on human rights. And those days, the situation was that Mr. Kennedy, during his campaign, he was advocating a more level playing ground between the whites and the blacks because the blacks were discriminated, denied, suppressed, marginalized, and so on. And the time had come for America to change that attitude. The aspiration of the majority people for a more level playing ground was reflected by John F. Kennedy. And in a message to the US Congress, he had very strongly pleaded for consumer rights. In fact, I can describe it as a message with a lot of foresight. Because by making the consumers or recognizing the consumer rights, the political system in America was trying to create a balance, a natural balance between the producers and the consumers. Otherwise, if the consumers are not vigilant, then the producers or the corporates, they will have a free ride and therefore, in a way to compel the corporates to become socially responsible, this was needed. Having said that, another 2 3 minutes about the times 1962, that particular period. In fact, we can take it in a decade of between 1960 and 70. We need to recall about 3 4 names. Number one, first one, of course, John F. Kennedy. Second is Ralph Nader. Ralph Nader is the world's most famous face when it comes to consumer rights. A product of the Harvard Law School, he started his career right from the student days, always questioning and trying to understand, go deep into the problem, and trying to set right the system. Ralph Nader's contribution is very well acknowledged, particularly when his first book, Unsafe, not safe at any speed. This was with regards to the big cars that were being rolled out from the industries, particularly General Motors and Ford. And those cars, there was a craze for the big cars, but there was no proper braking system. And it was observed that these cars would simply run into one another. Suppose one car stops because of the signal, then at least 10 15 other cars would come and jam into the cars. So a lot of people were dying, and nobody was taking it up, John. And that was the time when there was a president who would listen. So Ralph Nader took up that issue, and he compelled General Motors to take back, to recall. The Motors was compelled to recall thousands of vehicles, and the entire braking system was upgraded and then uploaded, and that is how, to a great extent, the cars and the roads became safe. Well, that's not the only thing. I wish to point out that as we move into right from 62 onwards, as we go into the future, we realize that human rights was increasingly becoming a major issue. We had Martin Luther King, who can be described as the high priest of human rights in America. Earlier, we had Abraham Lincoln, but then with the changing times, Martin Luther King became the latest voice, and he was attracting large audiences, particularly his very famous speech, I have a dream. That speech is entitled I Have a Dream. That attracted global attention. Martin Luther King was a disciple of Mahatma Gandhi, and in his very many speeches, he would very often quote Gandhiji. And you see, even Gandhiji had spoken about consumerism. In fact, one of his major components when it comes to business and trade, he is the one who promoted that the customer is the king in India. After that, we simultaneously we had Rachel Carson on environmental issues. So when we look at all these things, John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Ralph Nader, and the impact of Gandhiji globally earlier, all these things together resulted in a big change in the mindset of the people of America. And subsequent events, at this stage, it is not necessary. But I wish to go into the subject. Now, today's topic, as all of you are aware, this is with regards to climate change. The theme is empowering consumers through clean energy transitions. Actually, I don't agree with the topic. It could have been better framed, but it's okay without finding fault with the topic. it's important that we be positive and try to understand the positive message that is there. There is no doubt about the need for clean energy transition. As everybody knows, today, because of the extensive usage of fossil fuels, coal and oil and natural gas and other things, we are only injecting more and more of greenhouse gases, particularly CO2, into the atmosphere. And thanks to the very many global conferences conducted by United Nations, particularly the one at Rio conference. And prior to Rio, we have the World Commission on Environment and Development, which had highlighted the five major problems at the global level, including global warming leading to climate change. Now, what happened at Rio is that the nations of the world who met there, they adopted the World Commission report and then immediately decided to act. It is therefore they decided to create an umbrella organization or a special vehicle entitled Conference. It is known as UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And under the aegis of this particular UNFCCC, conferences of parties were being held worldwide, right? In different countries every year, almost annually, except during the time of COVID. We missed one particular session, but otherwise, regularly these global conferences with regards with an attempt to understand the subject and come to grips and compel the nation states to fall in line supporting them to reduce their emissions. It's a long story. I do not wish to go into that, but I wish to point out that in the context of today's topic, I was doing some research and trying to find out the literature on this particular topic, and I had the opportunity of listening to the UN Secretary General, particularly on today's topic. So he was mentioning about a 5-point program. Of course, there's nothing new in it because now the subject is worldwide. Almost everybody understands. So he was only re-emphasizing what needs to be done in the context of this particular topic, that is clean energy transitions. The first point is make renewable energy technology a global public good. Now here, friends, I wish to explain that what's happening in the scientific world, particularly in all the research laboratories in almost all the countries in the world, the scientific community which works and comes up with new inventions or new creations, or when they add to the global knowledge on that particular topic, they are going a little further and trying to privatize their knowledge. And for this, the patent laws in so many countries, they try to, they register their progress in knowledge under the patent laws. Okay, normal times that would have been fine and nobody is grudging that. But this is an emergency. We are face to face with the what we call the sixth mass extinction, as warned by David Attenborough. And when we are all collectively facing a total catastrophe, this is not the time to own knowledge. The time has now come, according to the Secretary General, that the entire world open up, ignore their patent, whatever they have patentized, and make it known to the world so that that particular knowledge becomes part of the common, what we call the public common good. The second thing is improve global access to components and raw materials of renewables. See, there was a time, I remember very well about 20, 25 years ago also, solar energy panels were very, very costly. And then out of my interest, I was following and keeping a track about the price tag of these cells. And today, believe me, friends, the cost of these solar cells and panels, etc., the entire cost has come down drastically. And there are a lot of studies to indicate that when it comes to wind and solar energy, these two renewable energy components or equipments or the hardware, everything, the prices have come down to much below the fossil fuel technologies. They are very, very cheap because we don't have to pay for the sunlight or for the wind, only for the equipment to harness. And the cost of these equipments have come down thanks to the initiative of several global companies. A third major thing is even today it's unfortunate that in most of the countries fossil fuels are subsidized. And as we were discussing earlier also, particularly in the context of COP27, earlier COP26 also, it was noticed that in all these conferences, more number of delegates were there, attending those conferences, and these delegates were from the fossil fuel industry. They were the carbon, that is the coal lobby, the oil lobby, and they would go to any extent to drive the delegates there. And continuously they were there and trying to create, restrict radical decisions. So they were acting as speed breakers and trying to purchase the public representatives, and these people were always for sale. And that is why we have been moving from conference to conference without making much progress, except for one or two conferences, Kyoto and Paris, but otherwise the progress is very limited. However, there is one point, and that point is the positive factor. The nation states may not be progressing towards net zero emissions. However, it was noticed that certain corporates throughout the world, in all the countries, in Germany and Japan particularly, they have started taking the initiative because within some of these corporates have what we call a think tank, and they could foresee that it is only a question of time when the global public opinion will prevail against the polluting companies, and therefore they were silently preparing themselves for this transition. And that is why we see a lot of Japanese and German companies coming, individually, these corporates were moving in the direction of net zero. However, that is not sufficient, but it is important to note that the word corporate social responsibility is a product of this kind of thinking. That is, even the corporates have a social responsibility, just as we individuals have social responsibility. Citizens have a responsibility, citizens have duties. For example, even in our constitution, we have the chapter on fundamental duties. We no doubt have rights, but duties also are there. Just as the citizens are duty bound, so also the corporates, they have to change. And I'm happy to state that this has become a great movement, and I'm sure in the months to come, we'll see a positive outcome of this kind of a global competition to reduce their individual emissions. The fourth thing is shifting energy subsidies from fossil fuel Already, I made the point that in most of the countries, fossil fuels are being subsidized, and this is happening globally. Now, UN Secretary General wants these individual nation states to shift their, that is, the country's subsidies be shifted from fossil fuel to renewable energy. And once this happens, because renewable energies are the need of the hour, therefore they should be subsidized. But since anyhow we have to phase out fossil fuels, we have to withdraw the subsidies from that field and transfer it to the renewable energy account. And lastly, he says that the individual nation states need to take into consideration. They need to remember that their commitments given at global conferences, at COP, so many COPs that have been conferences or parties held right from Paris to the recent one in the Middle East. And they have to, here I wish to point out that they have to keep in mind, that it is known that every country has promised that they would try to, uh, restrict the global average temperature from rising to 1.5. Initially, they said 2, but they would try to make it below 1.5. Now, since nation states have already promised, it is important that they take into consideration their own nationally determined commitments, the nationally determined contributions, and design their energy policy in such a way that we can say that these sanctions should be parallel to the commitments they made at global conferences. Friends, as we move into the future, it is important. I'm happy for one thing that the consumer movement is now, it has been, there's a pressure on the movement to make it environment friendly. And to conclusively, I have to pinpoint that there is a global movement again in favor of minimalism. Minimalism. This is nothing but every individual, who is alive today on the planet Earth, they will have to organize their lifestyle so as to give the least of impact when it comes to the carbon footprint. This is one aspect. Also, we have to take into consideration the great literature that has emerged during the last 60 years, particularly the book Limits to Growth. Keep in mind, those two limits are number one, the depletion of natural resources and the increasing cost of pollution. Now the time has come that, as recently the government of India once again emphasized, that it is important that we organize our individual lifestyles to reduce our carbon footprint. So the program that has been launched by the government of India and adopted at the UN is LIFE, LIFE, that is Lifestyles for Environment. And this is nothing but what myself and along with Subbarao Garu and so many others we were part of the Andhra Pradesh Paryavarana Paristhiti Praja Nivedika report, and there we talked about lifestyles and its impact on environment. So, uh, with these few words, I wish to take leave of you all, and we need to change our lifestyle because it's a question of now or never.
Yeah,
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Sonal.
Professor. Thank you, Professor Purushottam Reddy garu. That's good. Actually, September 28th is the Green Consumerism Day, World Green Consumerism Day. And surprisingly, today, even the conventional consumer day has shifted to environment direction. That shows the entire consumer movement will focus its direction to green movement in the future. And it's time for the consumers, citizens to understand the need for it and promote the green products. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Shiv Prasad Garu.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Very well uh, orchestrated campaign which is going on. Where I really say from food to the transport, because right when we say food, it starts from your ground, Mother Earth, and transport air. If you can understand the pollution, and when we say food, organic food, devoid of chemicalized agriculture, fertilizers or hybrid seeds or pesticides. If you can stop that, then everything will be green. Then the transport, as you rightly said, alternative, renewable energy should be utilized, or instead of using private cars, big cars, we can always go for public transport. Metro is there, Hyderabad Metro Rail, which can connect anyone from everywhere, that they don't want to popularize. So when you transport, then education also. Transport as well as whatever you use in the education, right from paper or whatever it is, if you can minimize, nothing like it. Then it comes health. The health products, the products which we try to use, how good and how safe they are when it comes to your own body, when you are injecting them, and when you try to dispose them, how good and safe they are. So these are all matters of concern. And then the vehicle makes. Even today, I was referring to Anand Mahindra, a case which have registered in 2014, two invoices. That man comes out and he speaks so much. He doesn't want to attend the legal evidence, in spite of legal evidence. That's how this corporate world is selfish, only profit oriented. But the citizen consumer should understand whatever they do, they are licensed to manufacture or to come to the rescue, whether it is hospital to automotives, they should all be in the consumer interest and as per rule of law, taking care of our environment. Until and unless we survive in a proper way, all these utilities, we call they are life utilities or necessity, transport and otherwise, they should be in your interest. That means in consumers' interest only. These resources belong to you. Otherwise, they, for the sake of profit making, they utilize all the resources, they pollute everything, and you are the one who will suffer because you are going to stay in that polluted atmosphere in that area itself. So you wake up. This is a wake up call for our consumers. అందుకే తెలుగులో చెప్పారు, ప్రపంచ వినియోగదారుల దినం. అదేవిధంగా ఈ హక్కులు మనవే, ఈ హక్కులు మన కొరకే అని మీకు ఒకసారి గుర్తు చేస్తా ఉన్నారు. అందు గురించి తినే ఆహారం నుంచి మీరు ఎగిరే విమానం వరకు కూడా అన్ని మనవే కాబట్టి వనరులు ఎట్టి పరిస్థితుల్లో మనకు కావాల్సిన వనరులను దోపిడీ చేయకుండా వారు లాభ భీష్టితో వాటన్నిటినీ పర్యావరణాన్ని మొత్తం కొల్లగొడుతూ మన జీవన శైలినే మార్చే విధంగా ఉండకూడదు అంటే మనం మేలుకొనాలా. అదే ఈరోజు పెద్దలు ఇచ్చినటువంటి ఒక మంచి ఒక మెసేజ్ అనొచ్చు, ఒక సమాచారం మనకందరికి కూడా. మేలుకొంటే తప్ప మనం బాగుపడం, మన పిల్లలకు రేపు ఏమి ఇచ్చేటువంటి పరిస్థితి ఉండదు. అందుగురించే కన్జ్యూమర్ ఇస్ గాడ్ అంటారు, గ్రాహక్ ఏక్ భగవాన్ అంటారు. అందుగురించే మీరు ఆలోచన చేయండి, మన హితంలో మన గురించే ఉండాలి ఏదైనా కానీ. వాళ్ళ గురించి ఉంటే ఆలోచన చేస్తే ధ్వంసం విధ్వంసం, పర్యావరణం అవుట్, మన జీవన శైలి అవుట్, మనం బ్రతకడమే కష్టం అవుతుంది. ఎవ్రీథింగ్ షుడ్ బి ఇన్ ది కన్జ్యూమర్ సిటిజన్ ఓరియంటెడ్ అప్రోచ్ ఓన్లీ, వెదర్ ఇట్ ఈస్ బిజినెస్, వెల్ఫేర్ ఆర్ డెవలప్మెంట్. అదర్వైజ్ అవర్ లైఫ్ present will become untenable, and future there is nothing left we can give for our children or kith and kin. So you be selfish. This is what the message is from our gurus. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very
Thank you
much.
so much.
Do support DRTSPR channel, Citizen DRTSPR channel, and Environment People DRTSPR channel. They are all in larger public interest. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.